Earlier this season on the UMB Pulse, we heard from a University of Maryland, Baltimore alumna who wrote her autobiography retelling the story of her life and her career in the Peace Corps. Well, on this edition of the podcast, we have a writer of a different ilk.
Yes, today we're talking to Dr. Deborah Shlian. She's a 1972 graduate of the University of Maryland School of Medicine, where she earned her MD. She also earned an MBA from UCLA's Anderson School of Management. So she's been a medical doctor, and then we get to a part where she's a writer, and then there's a whole lot of in between where she had her own business. She's partnered on most of these ventures with her husband. So it will be a really great opportunity to learn about how you can change your path in life while still letting some of those things overlap.
We will definitely dive in about Deborah's writing in both the nonfiction and fiction worlds, where her specialty is the medical mystery thriller genre. Deborah has garnered multiple literary awards, including the Florida Book Awards Gold Medal. And like Dana said, Deborah collaborates with her husband Joel on some of those novels, which includes Rabbit in the Moon. And that book has received numerous awards.
And beyond fiction, Dr. Shlian has contributed to nonfiction literature, notably editing Lessons Learned, which includes stories from women leaders in STEM. It profiles 31 women who have made significant strides in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Several of them are actually from University of Maryland, Baltimore.
A woman of many, many talents. And how does she keep it all in order from one project to the next? Well, we are going to find out on this edition of the UMB Pulse.
You're listening to the heartbeat of the University of Maryland, Baltimore, the UMB Pulse.
Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we are excited to talk to you because you've spent many years being a doctor in the field, but you've also spent a number of years now writing and co-authoring a handful of books that, as an avid reader, I'm excited to talk to you about, especially because you cover a couple of different genres. So let's kick it off and talk a little bit about what inspired you to choose the University of Maryland, Baltimore for your medical education.
Well, first of all, I was born and raised in Baltimore. My dad is a physician. He's a proud graduate of the University of Maryland School of Medicine, class 43 December, which was the year that the World War II, the graduates of the med school actually graduated 6 months early in order to join the Army. So I was growing up, he was my role model. Almost all of his colleagues were University of Maryland School of Medicine grads. He was not only my role model, but he took me to house calls. He took me on rounds with patients. So I never thought about going to any other med school but the University of Maryland Med School.
We'll talk about your love for writing, your books, and everything in a bit. But continuing down the path of the medical education, you have a company or business dealing with the medical field. Tell us a little bit about what that is and some of the challenges you face launching your business and how it's going now.
I think I need to give you a little bit of background. After my residency, my husband, Joel, and I, and by the way, Joel is a graduate of this school, also he was a year ahead of me. We went out to Los Angeles and we became partners at Kaiser Permanente, which was an integrated group model HMO and one of the first managed care organizations in the United States in the 1970s. And after 10 years of working as a clinician at Kaiser, I was recruited to run Student Health Service. I became the medical director for UCLA Student Health Service, which is the primary care facility for all 33,000 students on campus. And in that role, my boss decided that I needed to get an MBA. He felt I needed to get more involved in administration. And so I actually finished that degree in 1988 with my husband. And as a result of that degree, I became part of the senior management team, which allowed me to attend policy meetings that heretofore I hadn't been invited to because there were only non-physicians that came to those meetings. But at the same time, I was getting calls from recruiters about other opportunities in medical management in California. And what they said was, after almost 20 years of being a clinician and along with this MBA, and I'm working in two managed care settings, that I was a strong candidate for a number of opportunities in both Southern and Northern California. So even though I was happy in UCLA, I was curious. I wanted to explore a couple of these options. So I had never worked with recruiters before. So I had no idea what to expect. Someone would call my office and they would tell me about an opportunity. They actually asked me if I wanted to be considered as a candidate. And by the way, if I didn't know, if I wasn't interested, then I know somebody else who might be interested. What was surprising was these recruiters often had very little information about the organization. They asked few relevant questions. They really weren't interested in my background that much. I mean, other than, was I right for that particular job? They really asked me nothing about my interests or my career goals. So that when I did interview, I offered John the opportunity was totally different from the recruiter's description. And as a result of these disappointing searches, I realized that there was an unfulfilled niche of full service, what I call full service comprehensive search consulting in the managed care market. Now, there were a lot of people out there that called themselves recruiters, but no other firm in that specific market had somebody with my credentials. So I thought I could bring a unique perspective to searches. And the other, what I call value added, was my willingness to develop long-term relationships with physicians, to actually guide them through the whole process, even putting them on the managed care career path and mentoring them along the way. And as I said, I have really had no experience with anyone in the search industry who was going to invest any time in my career. And I didn't think that anybody had my hands-on experience of understanding of what the talent pool was out there. While I was at UCLA, I started an organization that was part of the LA Business School and the School of Public Health. And what we did is we met once a month rather. We had speakers and we had talks about leadership. So I knew that there was a big pool of potential candidates. I guess to answer your question, but despite the sense that I thought I could do it better, it took months of soul searching before I actually took that leap to make the transition from physician manager to medical management search consultant. Because my professors at UCLA told me that most businesses fail more than succeed, especially consulting firms. They said that maybe 1 in 5 actually makes it. And so if I really wanted to be an entrepreneur, I had to be willing to take that risk. It really wasn't something I was thinking about before, but my husband really encouraged me. And so starting in 1993, I began to very slowly build a firm that initially concentrated only on physician executive searches. I worked with doctors one-on-one, and I actually spent a lot of time evaluating their career goals, their life priorities, and reworking their resumes. I developed better interview techniques for some of them. And when I did make the placement, I actually helped to negotiate their contract. That was very successful. And by word of mouth, I started to expand my client base, and I actually started working outside of managed care to work with academic institutions and research organizations, even some other consulting firms. And in 1994, my husband Joel joined me as president of the company. And then in 1998, we incorporated this Shlian and Associates. We moved our main base of operations to Florida because both sets of parents had very significant healthcare issues, and we really felt that we needed to be there to help with their care. I mean, we were flying back and forth between California and Florida at the time. Now, a lot of small business owners feel they have to expand in order to demonstrate their success. However, and I always remember this, that there was a Dun & Bradstreet study that said it's longevity rather than growth. That's the real measure of achievement. The companies that last 3 years or more are much more likely to make it. And here's a quote, and I'm going to have to read it because I can't remember it. But if you begin a company to capitalize on the wisdom and personal service of a key individual, namely you, big is bad. Their adding staff and projects can spread the core value of your firm so thinly that customers are dissatisfied. In a knowledge-based service firm, there's no economies of scale. So basically, one of the biggest decisions that we had to make early on was how to position ourselves. And Joel was pretty, I would say, prescient in saying that if we maintained ourselves as a boutique business, that we would have an advantage. We actually had an opportunity to join a large national recruiting company at one point, but instead, what we did was we developed affiliations with over a dozen associates that had offices across the country. All of them had very significant healthcare backgrounds. So we would call on them for specific searches. And I guess the bottom line is that being your own boss is definitely not for the faint of heart. But, the fact that we were successful has really been very sweet. And I would say that for me, the shift from a management position in what was a highly bureaucratic and hierarchical organization to becoming a CEO of my own company has been probably the most exciting and positive experience in my professional life. Now, when COVID began and staffing, started to decrease, companies weren't sure what was going to happen in the future. We actually decided to what I call retire. We still continue to advise some of our associates, but we're now concentrating on other interests. I went back to writing both fiction and nonfiction, and actually, Joel is helping me with a nonfiction project that we're working on right now. And then for Joel, it's been photography. So I guess that's a long way to answer your question. The whole idea of starting my own company was definitely not something that I ever thought I would do.
Were there ever times where you looked back and you thought, geez, how did I wind up here? What type of medicine did you practice? And were there periods or times when you missed that?
Well, we always, we practice family medicine. We have boards in family medicine. And I actually, when we moved to Florida, we did get our licenses, so we were doing some volunteer work. I've always felt that I'm a doctor. That is part of my main identity. And so whether I'm doing consulting or whether I'm doing actually taking care of patients one-on-one, I feel that's who I am. And I have to say that to give a plug to the University of Maryland School of Medicine, I think that when we went to school, their clinical program was fabulous. And to this day, I'm told that I teach, sometimes I've taught hands-on clinical diagnosis that people are always impressed. I have to thank the school for that.
You started to mention the writing. I know that you write sometimes with your husband, as you pointed out. How has your experience as a physician influenced your writing, particularly in crafting your medical thrillers?
I've always loved to write. I mean, when I was a kid, I had my own little newspaper called the Chatterbox.
What fun.
High school, I worked at a newspaper, and at camp I did plays. And at the end of the senior year of high school, I wrote a skit that was called "Those Are the Years That Were," which was based on David Frost. That was the week there was. I'm sure I'm too old for a lot of people to remember that, but anyway, that was a big hit. So I always liked to write, but my father said to me, writing may not be a career that is necessarily going to pay the bills. And since you say you want to be a doctor, that if you're a physician, you can always write. So the truth is the matter that when I was, especially when I was really full-time practicing, I did a lot of clinical research projects. I wrote nonfiction articles and articles of books and nonfiction. But, and I say this sometimes when I give a book talk, but you can't, and this is really true, you can't live in Los Angeles very long without getting hit by the Hollywood bug, because you're reading something else on the side. Your dentist is a producer, your lawyer is an agent, and every waiter and waitress is an actor. It wasn't really until I read Robin Cook's book, Coma. He's an ophthalmologist, and I thought that was one of the best, I think, medical thrillers that has ever been written. I thought, gee, if he can do that, maybe I can do that too. So, it's not surprising that because I'm a physician that, they say write what you know. So obviously, I have to say that having the experience of the opportunity to get to know so many different individuals over the years, to learn about their lives through a kind of intimate perspective as a doctor, that's, I think, quite unique. And that's given me a breadth of experiences and from which to draw my characters and situations. Now, Joel and I, as you said, collaborated on 2 successfully published medical mysteries while we were still living in Los Angeles. One was with Feynman & Schuster, and one was with Berkeley Books. But we had an agent at the time, and she wanted us to quit medicine. And that was not my intent. I loved writing, but I certainly didn't want to give up medicine. So it wasn't really until we moved to Florida that we actually finished a book that we had been working on for a number of years, which was called Rabbit in the Moon. It's actually a medical mystery thriller, but it's international. It's based in China. And that book became a bestseller, and it was published by Ocean View Publishing, which is a small paperback publishing firm that focuses on mysteries and thrillers. It's won a number of literary awards, including the gold medal for the Florida Book Award. We got to meet the governor, which is really fun. And the audiobook version even won an honorable mention at the Hollywood Book Festival. So encouraged by those successes, I've written 5 new medical mystery thrillers. 4 are in a series that I've co-written with a colleague from UCLA, Herndari, and one of them I wrote myself called Silent Survivor. I wrote that a couple of years ago. And I would say one thing that the most important lesson that I've learned from these endeavors is that physicians should develop outside interests outside of medicine, even if you combine them with medicine, so that, when you transition to retirement, you don't completely lose your identity. Because I have a lot of colleagues who, have actually suffered depression the moment that they're no longer called doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as Dana could probably tell you, we have a tremendous amount of physicians and scientists and people from all sorts of corners of UMB who have other talents, whether their artwork is published in 1807 or they play the piano organ or President Gerald and his blacksmithing and iron work that he does, where he's been selected into juried art shows. But it all takes a bunch of different types of creative energy, and some can be more effortless than others. And so you're both in fiction and nonfiction, and sounds like the fiction is weighing heavily in your kind of priorities right now. But do you feel like one is you can get into the mood or the mindset to start writing and the words come more easily than the other?
You mean fiction versus nonfiction?
Yeah, fiction versus nonfiction.
It depends on the project that I'm working on. Right now, I actually had straddled 2 projects, one nonfiction, one fiction. The fiction is the last book so far in the series about a radio talk show host who solves a murder mystery. I think in general, I would say that for me, fiction is more challenging because, I really believe that I always do a lot of research when I'm writing fiction. With nonfiction, you kind of have your work in front of you already. But for fiction, for example, the book that we did about China, we spent almost 5 years researching Chinese history because the book takes place in 1989 during the very short student democracy movement that ended at Tiananmen Square. And we wanted to make sure that every detail as far as the situations, even the people that were there, were accurate. In a book I did called Silent Survivor, which is about, part of this plot is about military sexual assault, I actually interviewed a number of women who had experienced that. And because I wanted to make sure, again, that was realistic. But the last book that we did, which is called Dirty Deeds, which takes place in New York, I hadn't spent much time in New York, so I had to do a lot of research about the place because it takes place in Queens. And of course, and it also takes place in 2008. We had one issue with hacking, so I had to know what was available technologically at the time, that kind of thing. So I guess, to answer your question, I would say I'm more challenged by fiction. I spend a lot more time before I write a novel thinking about the characters and the plot before I actually sit down and write it. With nonfiction, I pretty much can start right away.
Which makes so much sense because you're creating a story, but it has to be based in reality, and you want to make sure that reality is as true to life as possible to make the made up story believable, right? I understand you have 2 of your novels been optioned for screenplays, and I know from talking with authors and producers before, sometimes that translation from book to the film to the screen, all that research may be adjusted for that medium, and maybe you get away from reality a little bit more. Can you share any updates on the progress of those screenplays and how you're involved in the adaptation?
Well, actually, the 2 books that were optioned were our first 2 novels, and we actually got as far as getting articles in Variety and Hollywood Reporter. So we thought for sure these were going to get made. But typically, lots of books get optioned. They don't necessarily get made. We did option Wednesday's Child, which is our second novel, twice, and it didn't get made. But at that time, there were very few opportunities to even get involved in the writing. They said, if you're a novelist, you stay in your lane. You're not going to write the screenplay. I think some of that is different now because I do see some authors who are allowed to at least get involved in school writing. Because I've been so busy with my recruiting business and now with some of these nonfiction projects that I've been working on, I haven't gone back to actually see if there's an opportunity. I think my series would make a great series for some of the streaming opportunities out there like Netflix and so on. So Linda and I are looking at some of that, but right now nothing is being done. It's basically I have read rights to all of my books. So if anybody out there is a producer or direction, feel free to give me a call.
Well, maybe our podcast will help get the word out for you. That would be terrific. Let's go flip to the other side and talk a little bit about your Lessons Learned series and how it spotlighted women in STEM fields such as physicians and some people from here at UMB, faculty, students, and recent retirees. That series heard from Donna L. Parker, professor of medicine and senior associate dean for undergraduate medical education, and then Kathleen Newsel. Dr. Newsel has been a professor and a researcher here at UMB for many years. So can you give us a little bit of information about the current climate of scientists and physicians in not only maybe some of those people that you've written about, if you've kept in touch with them, or if there's any other maybe books that you are thinking about writing that covers some of those same areas or any of the other true to life areas that you referred to?
Well, the idea of writing those two books were contracted actually by the American Association for Physician Leadership, or the publisher. And they came to me to ask me about actually updating a monograph that I had written in the 90s about where women were in terms of leadership. Because as a member of that organization, I was not that happy to see so few women in leadership roles. And I felt that, we needed to find out what were the reasons. So with the Lessons Learned Stories from Women Physician Leaders was the third update of the 90s book, because in 2012, I did a second version. And then right before COVID, they asked me to do this book yet again. And in that book, I identified about 33 women, including, and I was trying very hard to find women from University of Maryland Med School, and was lucky to find, as you said, Donna, and I'm trying to think who was the other person now.
Dr. Newsel, she was the director for the Center of Vaccine Development and Global Health.
I had to get that a little bit, as a matter of fact. But what I did is, instead of my interviewing them, I thought that it would be much more compelling because I like to write fiction and I know that people like stories. I had them write their own stories to really tell how their career paths, what were the obstacles and the challenges that they faced. And we did several iterations. I was the editor and I actually had my chapter in there as well. But what was very interesting was so many of the obstacles and challenges were so similar to all of them. And yet these women were so successful and had finally made it to more senior roles. With the book so that book was very successful. And the next year they asked me to write a book about women leaders in STEM. And again, I looked to the University of Maryland. Rhoda Hertzana is in that book. She's now with NIH. I hope she's still with NIH, but she moved to NIH. She's an ear, nose, and throat, and also a PhD. So these are all women who are PhDs. Some have MDs as well as PhDs. Claire Fraser, the outgoing head of the Institute for Genomic Sciences, is in that book. Rita Colwell, who is she's 87, I think now. She was one of the first women head of the National Science Foundation. Again, I had these women write their own stories. I edited those, and they're amazing stories. If anybody has read the fiction Lessons in Chemistry, I don't know if that became a series on television, but it's a fictional version of what a woman named Emily is. What is her name? Her last name is Dot. What she has to go through to become a PhD and to become a scientist. Well, these women were just like her, only they were real life scientists who had to go through all kinds of hoops to make it as senior leaders in STEM. So those two books, I'm hoping those will act as role models and mentors for young women who are interested in medicine and STEM. I know there are a lot of medical students now who are thinking about dual credential, having MDs and PhDs, so that they can find lots of women in both books who look like them and who are, have been very successful. And hopefully that will not only encourage them to become scientists, but also to become leaders in science.
With the current environment where leaders of all types are put in extraordinary circumstances with pooling of funding, I was wondering if you could foresee maybe a sequel or follow-up to some of these leaders about the new challenges they're facing that are unprecedented. Because Kathy Newsel actually has been in the news this week, according to Science Magazine. She's been working with the Fogarty Center with NIH, but she's been put in this position where it's either accept a position at Indian Health Services or resign. And she told the news outlet that she'll make her decision over the weekend. So people who fought to get in these great positions are now almost powerless. And I was wondering maybe what your perspective on that is, or just what you would want to kind of maybe follow up on some of these leaders to hear what they're going through, that they could maybe share some of that wisdom to future STEM leaders.
Well, I'm certainly, I actually had on my list to call Kathy next week. I just didn't want to bother because I had read about that. I'm very upset about what's happening in terms of science, and the fact that so many of my colleagues have either lost grants or, are concerned that they may lose grants. And I've talked to a number of young people who are, considering whether they even want to go to medical school or become PhDs. So I don't know that this would be a necessary follow-up book, but I think we need to talk about it more. And I'm actually going to be attending a meeting with the American Association for Advancement of Science. They're doing a Zoom just to discuss this issue, because I'm not sure what we can do right now except to speak up.
Deborah, I wanted to talk a little bit about maybe the disparity between men and women who make up either medical school classes or take leadership roles, are able to take leadership roles in healthcare. It seems to be still a very male-dominated profession. What do you see as the biggest barriers for women advancing in these positions?
So when I went to medical school, there were less than 10% of the class were women. Today, I think the University of Maryland School of Medicine classes as much as 60%. In terms of leadership, we're not even, maybe 16% across the healthcare spectrum. And I see that as a big problem, because we have so many talented women now who are, as my books have shown, have all the expertise that you need to be in these roles. So what are some of the obstacles? Well, some of them are personal. There still is this imposter syndrome that unfortunately more women than men seem to possess. And these are maybe highly achieving women who just feel that they're not qualified enough for a particular role in a leadership role. When I was doing recruiting, I found that if I had a job that I felt was perfect for a particular woman candidate, I vetted her and checked to see that she was a perfect fit for this particular organization. I'd send her a job description, and then I'd literally count the seconds until she would tell me what specific skill or for whatever reason she maybe wasn't quite right for the job. But if I sent that same job description to a male candidate, not a second passed before they were not necessarily as qualified. They had the confidence to say that they could do the job. So that's something that we have to overcome personally. In terms of what I would say institutionally, there still is gender bias. There still is the sense of what makes a good leader, what gender makes a good leader, which is not, has not been borne out in terms of studies. There is still the issue about work-life balance. Unfortunately, even the younger women that I've talked to tell me that, when they have to make a decision about having a family, how do they balance that they're taking on more of the caregiving roles than the guys are. I mean, some are helping more for sure, but it's still not 50-50. So that becomes a problem. And then the other thing is that there haven't been enough mentors and role models. And that's, again, what I hope my books are providing is at least some way for people to see that there really are people out there that you can identify with as a mentor or as a role model.
I remember you had one UMB student who's actually still, I believe, still here, completing her program, Ashwarya. She was a student of the year in 2022. She served as a mentor for the UMB Cure Scholars, which helps students in West Baltimore pursue those fields. So we have our very own UMB students trying to help that next generation find a path. So it's great to hear. And I'm glad you highlighted her too.
Yeah, well, she and I talked a lot about that because I was very, very happy to see that now that University of Maryland Med School has provided that opportunity because I think that's so critical.
We've covered a lot, and you mentioned that you have some projects on your plate right now that you're focusing on. So what's next for you? What's grabbing your attention right now?
I have a contract that with my husband to write a book about dual physician marriages. The American Association of Physician Leadership said that there is only one book that they could find out there that was about medical marriages, and it was basically written in the 90s, and it was written by a therapist about male physicians married to women who were not doctors. And most of them were in therapy and not very happy. Well, what we have done is we've identified over 30 couples, several of whom are from the University of Maryland Med School, and they are happily married couples. I want to say we specifically picked people that have been married, and not necessarily a long time. Some are early in their marriages, and some are actually retired, like Joel and me. But this is going to be another kind of lessons learned. So what are the lessons that these couples have learned in terms of what's made the relationship work over, with various obstacles that we all have to face in a relationship. And so that's been a lot of fun because I'm really getting some great stories. And we are the editors for that book, as well as providing a chapter of our own.
That's just a great idea for a book, and you guys certainly seem to be the perfect pair to be to be managing and leading it. So you were in med school at the same time, then you were physicians at the same time, then your business together, now writing together. You guys must really like each other a lot.
We've been teased a lot about being together so much, but I would say that that's been a real positive for us for our relationship. Even we're in the Army Medical Corps during Vietnam because my husband had to join the medical corps in order to have his residency, so he wouldn't get drafted during Vietnam. And so I ended up joining as well. So we did that together.
Really are the duo pair. You talked a little bit before about how you think it's important for any medical person to have some sort of other outlet, and that could be creative, or maybe it's something totally different. Maybe it's being a marathon runner. But what is your advice for aspiring physicians who are also interested in writing? Is that, anything they should be focusing on, or maybe an area to start in, or things to do just to kind of get themselves in a writing zone?
Well, I think the only thing you do is face the empty page. One thing I would advise is maybe to keep a diary of some of your patients and of the story. Obviously, you're not going to put the names of the patients in the book, but it's basically kind of write about your experiences. I think that's very helpful. But other than that, I would say, there aren't any obstacles now to physicians writing. I mean, when I was on my first novel, I remember I met Michael Creighton, who was a physician, and he told me, don't tell them you're a doctor because again, they want you to stay in your lane. You're a doctor or you're a writer. And so,
That's interesting.
So we didn't put MD on our, buying Deborah Shlian MD. But today there really aren't those obstacles. I hope that the medical school, University of Maryland Med School, would encourage, writing. There are some schools I think that actually have some classes in writing, both fiction and nonfiction.
We do have a science, writing, and communication course and program that we have in the School of Graduate Studies, actually. So more of obviously the nonfiction part, but it does help train students to communicate science to the public, through the media as well, so they can explain very complicated concepts simply for people to digest. So it's a great program there. If you could give one piece of advice to the current UMB class, what would it be?
I would say find a mentor, or even more than one mentor, because that person, if they really are a good mentor, will help to, can help to guide a career, get advice when there are some obstacles that you're facing. To maybe encourage people who don't have enough confidence in themselves to, And the other thing is to expand your professional network, because I think joining an organization, obviously an alumni organization, but also for women, the American Medical Women's Association is a wonderful organization to really enhance young, both students and physicians who graduated, in terms of opportunities that are out there and help to identify career goals. And of course, the American Association for Physician Leadership would not want me to miss talking about them as well, because they do have some leadership training programs. But basically, I would say mentors are the most important.
Absolutely.
Deborah, I'm wondering if there's anything else that maybe we've left out that you would like to have a chance to talk about. We've tried to touch on your writing, your business.
No, I mean, I think that I've had a very interesting career. I would say that my mother took me once to see Robert Frost, and I remember his poem about the road not taken. And I always thought about that as, paths that I never would have considered if I didn't take those opportunities. Because I really always thought I would be a clinician like my dad. He didn't retire until way into his 70s, and he loved practicing medicine, and I did too. But as other opportunities came up, I decided to take those hands or forks in the road. And for me, that's made all the difference. And I would say, be open to opportunities.
That's wonderful advice for all of us, no matter what field we're in. We never know where we're going to wind up next or what that next season of life looks like. And it sounds like you're still enjoying this season of life with your writing. We look forward to keeping an eye out for some of your new productions, and the best of luck to you as you continue forward, Deborah. Thank you for joining us today.
It's a better pleasure. Thank you.
The UMB Pulse with Charles Shlian and Dana Rampolla is a UMB Office of Communications and Public Affairs production. Edited by Charles Shlian, marketing by Dana Rampolla.